The souk of Damascus was alive. Merchants called out prices, gold glinted under the lamps, spices filled the air with sharp fragrance. Among them sit a man everyone knew. His name was Zayd ibn Khalid. Tall, wrapped in silks finer than most could afford, with a voice that carried authority. Children ran past him in awe. Other merchants looked at him with envy. Customers bowed slightly as he passed. Zayd was no ordinary merchant. He owned half the caravans that entered Damascus. His warehouses spilled over with saffron, cinnamon, and pearls. His name was spoken with both admiration and fear. But wealth has shadows. Behind the walls of his mansion, behind the laughter at his feasts, behind the polished smile on his lips, Zayd carried secrets that would one day rise against him. That night, he sat in his courtyard under the moonlight. A servant poured wine into his cup. Zayd swirled it, staring at the reflection of the moon. A whisper moved through his mind. "You have all this wealth, but you know what you did to earn it." He clenched his jaw, dismissed the thought, and drank. But the whisper would not leave him. Morning in Damascus. The market gates opened. A caravan entered, dusty travelers from Aleppo. Among them was a man cloaked in black, with a face hidden beneath a simple scarf. He carried no goods, no wares, only a small satchel. This stranger walked directly to Zayd's stall. He waited, he watched, and when Zayd looked up from weighing saffron, their eyes locked. "Peace be upon you," the stranger said. "And on you peace," Zayd replied, uneasy. "What do you seek?" The man's voice was calm. "I seek truth. And you, merchant, carry more lies than gold." The words cut like a blade. Zayd's hands froze. His servants frowned. But the stranger smiled faintly and walked away into the crowd. That night, Zayd tossed and turned in his bed. How could this man know? And worse, what else did he know? The next evening, the stranger returned. This time he spoke only a single name. Yusuf. Zayd's heart nearly stopped. Yusuf ibn Hashid, the man Zayd had betrayed years ago, his partner, his brother in trade. Zayd had taken a deal meant for both of them. He had lied, signed in secret, and Yusuf had been ruined. That betrayal was the foundation of his empire. And now, a stranger knew. "Who are you?" Zayd demanded. The man only smiled. "I am a reminder." And he vanished into the shadows of the market. Word began to spread. In the tea houses, men whispered of a stranger who spoke hidden truths. "Did you hear? He exposed a judge who stole zakat. They say he knew the debts of the governor before they were written down." Some call him a saint, others a curse. Zayd grew restless. Everywhere he turned, he saw suspicion in people's eyes. Did they know? Had the stranger told them? At night, he would stare at the lamps flickering in his mansion, wondering if they too were watching him. To silence the whispers, Zayd threw a feast. The richest nobles came, poets recited, dancers twirled, servants carried trays of honey and lamb. Zayd laughed loudly, drank deeply, and gave gifts of silk to his guests. But as the music rose, the stranger appeared again, at the edge of the hall, silent, watching. Zayd's laughter faltered. He excused himself, rushed outside, and shouted, "Why do you haunt me? What do you want?" The man's reply was soft. "I want you to remember the day when no gold, no silks,
and no empire will save you. I want you to remember Allah." Zayd's chest tightened, his hand shook, but his pride was stronger. "Leave, or I will crush you like an ant." The man only bowed his head and walked away. Days passed, but something shifted. Customers began avoiding Zayd's stalls. Whispers grew. His wealth is cursed. One of his caravans was robbed. Another sank in the river. Zayd stormed into the souk, shouting at his men, cursing the heavens. But deep inside, he knew this was not just bad fortune. This was a storm rising against him. That night, Zayd dreamed. He was standing in a desert, alone, with his treasures piled high around him. Suddenly, the ground split. His gold and silks fell into a roaring fire below. He tried to grab them, but the flames licked his hands. From the darkness, he heard the stranger's voice. "Nothing will remain but truth." He woke drenched in sweat, trembling. For the first time in years, he whispered, "O Allah, forgive me." The next day, Zayd called for his most trusted servant. He confessed everything: the betrayal of Yusuf, the forged contracts, the bribes. The servant stared at him horrified. "Master, if people knew this..." Zayd gripped his servant's shoulder. "If Allah knows, then it is already enough." Word spread. Yusuf ibn Hashid had returned to Damascus after years of exile. Zayd's blood turned cold. He avoided the markets, avoided the mosques, hid in his mansion. But Yusuf came. Older now, his beard streaked with gray, his eyes calm. Yusuf said, "I heard you prospered." Zayd bowed his head. "I prospered at your cost." The words hung heavy. Silence stretched. And then Yusuf said, "The dunya is nothing. What matters is whether Allah forgives us." That evening, Zayd sought the stranger. He found him in the courtyard of the Umayyad Mosque, sitting in quiet dhikr. Zayd fell to his knees. "Who are you?" The man raised his eyes. "I am no one. I am but a servant who reminds. The truth you feared was always within you. I only held up the mirror." Zayd's tears fell onto the stone. For the first time in years, his heart bowed before Allah.
Days turned into weeks. Zayd no longer walked through Damascus in silks. He sold his jewels. He dismissed half his servants. His mansion grew silent, its lamps unlit. But his heart felt lighter. For the first time, he prayed with humility, his forehead touching the ground, not out of habit, but with tears. People whispered, "Zayd is ruined. His empire has fallen." But those who saw him in the mosque noticed something new in his eyes: peace. One night, his last caravan arrived, but the goods were stolen on the road. The old Zayd would have cursed, broken cups, whipped his men. Now he only raised his hands and said, "Alhamdulillah, it was never mine. It belongs to Allah." The souk laughed at him, competitors rejoiced, but the stranger's words echoed in his heart. Nothing will remain but truth. One morning, as Zayd walked through the market with only a loaf of bread in hand, a poor widow stopped him. "Zayd ibn Khalid," she said bitterly. "Once you turned away the poor. Once you humiliated those who asked. And now you yourself walk empty-handed." Her words pierced him deeper than any blade. He lowered his head and said, "You are right. I was unjust. I was blind. Forgive me, sister." He broke the bread in two and gave her half. She stared at him, stunned. Then her eyes softened. "Perhaps you have changed," she whispered. That day, Zayd sat by the mosque door, feeding orphans with what little he had. He no longer gave from excess wealth, but from his own hunger. And the people began to see. The merchant of secrets was no longer chained by pride. He was learning sincerity. One evening, as the call to Maghrib echoed, Zayd felt a presence beside him. It was the stranger, the same man with the piercing eyes, calm, steady. "You have lost much," the stranger said softly. Zayd nodded. "I have lost the world, but I fear I still carry the weight of my sins." The man smiled faintly. "Then know this, sometimes losing the world is the first step to gaining the afterlife." Zayd's heart trembled. He whispered, "Who are you? Why do your words burn deeper than gold or fire?" But the man only raised his finger toward the minaret, where the muazzin's voice was rising. "Hayya ala salah! Hayya ala salfalah!" Come to prayer, come to success. And before Zayd could speak again, the stranger had vanished into the crowd. That night, Zayd remained in the mosque long after others had left. The silence pressed on him, broken only by his own sobs. He remembered the beggars he mocked, the men he underpaid, the arrogance with which he walked past the hungry. Every memory struck him like a stone, and for the first time Zayd raised his hands trembling. "O Allah, I was blind with pride. I thought wealth was mine. I thought power was mine. Forgive me before the earth swallows me." Tears soaked his beard. He pressed his forehead to the floor, whispering again and again, "Forgive me, forgive me, forgive me." In that moment, he felt lighter than ever before. The burden of years was finally lifting. At dawn, Zayd awoke from restless sleep. Outside his door lay a small basket of dates and bread. No note, no name. He smiled faintly. "A gift from Allah," he whispered. Instead of keeping it, he carried it to a nearby orphanage and left it there quietly. The children's joy filled the courtyard. Their laughter rose like birds to the sky. Zayd stood at a distance, watching with tears. In their smiles, he found more wealth than in all the caravans he once owned. And for the first time in his life, Zayd ibn Khalid realized, to give in secret is sweeter than to rule in pride. Word spread quickly through the bazaar. "Have you heard? Zayd ibn Khalid has become a pauper, praying in the mosque, feeding orphans." Laughter followed those whispers. One evening, two of Zayd's old rivals approached him. Their silks gleamed, their rings heavy with gold. "So this is where you've ended, Zayd? A beggar among beggars?" One sneered. Zayd lowered his gaze. His pride wanted to answer back, but his heart whispered, "Patience." He smiled faintly.
Better to be a beggar before men than a beggar before Allah on the day of judgment. The men fell silent. They had no answer to words that sharp. Days later, Zayd's former servant approached him in secret. In his hands was a pouch heavy with coins. "Master, I found this hidden away in your old storehouse. It belongs to you." The sight of gold made Zayd's chest tighten. For a moment, the old hunger rose again. With this, he could reclaim power. With this, he could silence his rivals. But then he remembered the stranger's words. Sometimes, losing the world is the first step to gaining the afterlife. He closed the servant's hand over the pouch. "Take it. Feed your family. The gold no longer belongs to me." The servant's eyes filled with tears. "May Allah honor you, Zayd ibn Khalid." That night, Zayd remained alone in his small room. The wind whispered outside, rattling the shutters. A knock came at the door. When he opened it, the stranger stood there once more. "Your heart has been tested," the man said. Zayd lowered his head. "And I was nearly drowned by it." The man smiled. "But you let go. And because you let go, Allah will give you more than gold can buy." Before Zayd could respond, the man placed a hand on his shoulder. His touch was warm, steady, calming. Then he whispered, "Prepare yourself. A greater test is coming." And just like before, he vanished into the night.
The bazaar was quiet that morning when Zayd heard his name whispered. Turning, he saw them, 3 men cloaked in black, former associates, men who once bowed to him when he was powerful. "Zayd," one said, his voice like gravel, "we remember your old ways. We remember your debts to us." Another leaned forward, eyes sharp. "Come back. We can restore what you lost, the wealth, the respect, the fear." Zayd's heart thudded. For a moment he saw his old life glimmering before him, the throne of trade, the influence, the secret networks. But then he remembered the weight of sin and the lightness of prayer. He breathed deeply. "I no longer sell shadows. I trade only with Allah now." Their laughter echoed as they left him, yet deep inside, Zayd felt both fear and relief. That night, the stranger appeared again, seated calmly by Zayd's door. "You refused them," he said. Zayd nodded, but my heart trembled. The stranger's eyes softened. "Faith is not the absence of fear, Zayd. It is standing firm despite it." Then his face grew serious. "Know this, the men you refused will not forget. They will come again, and this time they will not bring words. They will bring fire." Zayd's breath caught. Fire. Destruction. The shadow of danger now loomed over his fragile peace. It came without warning. In the deep of the night, Zayd awoke to screams. Smoke curled through the cracks of his small home. Flames roared outside. His neighbors were crying. Their stalls and homes were burning. Through the smoke, Zayd saw them, the men in black, torches in hand, their eyes cold with vengeance. One of them shouted, "This is what comes to those who betray their old brothers." Zayd rushed into the street, pulling children away from the flames, helping women escape the fire.
His hands blistered, his lungs burned. He leaned closer, his voice barely above a whisper. Prepare yourself. Their revenge is not over, but neither is Allah's plan. Zayd felt a shiver. The night was calm, but he knew another storm was coming. It began with whispers, a shadow at the edge of the bazaar, a figure vanishing into the crowd whenever Zayd looked up. One night, he returned home to find his door slightly open. Inside, nothing was missing, but on his table lay a single dagger, its blade still wet with lamb's blood. It was not theft. It was not robbery. It was a warning. The men in black had not forgotten. They were waiting, and they wanted you to know it. Zayd sat awake that night, his hands trembling. He thought of running, leaving the city behind, starting fresh somewhere else. But then he remembered the faces in the bazaar, the children who now looked at him with hope, the widows who whispered du'as for him each night. If he left, he would betray them all. And worse, he would betray the chance Allah had given him to make things right. So Zayd fell to his knees. For the first time in years, his tears touched the ground. Ya Allah, I am weak, but you are strong. Protect me, guide me, and do not let me fail again. The night felt lighter. His heart steadied. Faith had silenced fear. Days later, rumors began to spread. Merchants spoke of strange men arriving at the city's edge, armed men, dangerous men. The people turned to Zayd. Will you protect us? They asked. We trust you, they said. Zayd felt the weight of their words. He was no warrior, no leader of armies, just a man who once sold secrets. But he also knew this. Allah had lifted him from the filth of betrayal and given him honor through the trust of the people. He could not turn away now. The men in black were gathering their forces, and Zayd was preparing his soul. The night slept uneasily. Hushed voices carried through the alleyways. They're here. That night, torches burned in the distance. The men in black had returned, not with whispers this time, but with the sound of boots and blades. At the head of the group stood their leader, tall, cold, eyes like stone. He had come for Zayd. Zayd stood in the courtyard of the mosque, his people behind him. No weapons in his hands, only faith in his heart. The leader of the shadows stepped forward. Zayd ibn Khalid, you were one of us. You profited from silence. You thrived on betrayal. But now you think you can cleanse yourself? You think you can stand against us? Zayd's voice shook, but it did not falter. I was once blind, yes. I sold secrets for gold, but no more. My soul is not for sale, not today, not ever again. Do what you must, but know this. Every step you take against me is a witness for Allah on the day you will stand before Him. The crowd stirred. Even some of the men in black looked uneasy. The weight of truth pressed heavier than their swords. The leader drew his blade. Silence swallowed the courtyard. Zayd closed his eyes, whispering the Shahada. Then a sound broke the night. Allahu Akbar! From the alleys, the townspeople emerged. Men who once feared, women who once wept, even children with stones in their hands. They surrounded Zayd, their faces fierce with courage born of faith. The men in black faltered. Their leader looked around, and for the first time, fear touched his eyes. He spat on the ground. "This is not over," he growled, and with a sharp gesture, his men melted back into the darkness. Zayd stood trembling, not from fear,